some of the political headlines that David Litt has been watching. He's a head writer at Funny or Die, former speechwriter for President Obama and author of the book, Thanks, Obama, My Hopey-Changey White House Years. Brian Darling, founder of Liberty Government Affairs and former senior communications director for Senator Rand Paul. What's up, Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney from Alabama, and Jim Newell, staff writer at Slate. Now, there's only 3 of you up there, but there are really 4 of them here, I think. Let's start. It's normally the way it works. Oh, there you go. Okay. Let's start with this then, if we can, David. The issue of the tax plan and the headlines I've been coming out with. And I want to bring up one poll in terms of the approval rating of it. It is now 25% approving of the tax plan, 52% not approving. Is this thing going to make it through when Congress comes back?
I have no idea if it's going to make it through. I do think one of the things we saw during the Obama years was that tax cuts for the wealthy became extremely unpopular. And as you pointed out in your introduction, this is a tax plan based around tax cuts for the wealthy. If you think the biggest challenge facing America is that Donald Trump doesn't have enough money, you're going to love this tax bill. If you don't think that's the biggest challenge facing America, you probably won't approve of it. And so I think whether it passes or doesn't pass, this is just a political and moral disaster for the Republican Party right now, and it comes on the heels of the other one, which was their health care repeal attempt.
Brian Darling, one of the issues that have been brought in, and that's the mandate. And once you bring in health care, which the Republicans have not succeeded with in the past, once you bring in the individual mandate and you try to repeal that, are you adding in a complexity to this debate that is not needed, a tax plan already having so many issues that many of the voters that brought Donald Trump into office will not like? You're just adding another one into that pot of I don't like.
I think you might be right. It is adding something in that's a little bit controversial and doesn't have directly anything to do with tax reform. But ultimately, I think Republicans understand they have to get this tax reform. It has to get passed. This bill has to pass. They need to have one accomplishment, one legislative accomplishment walking out of this year, walking into the elections next fall. And if the economy continues to do well, I think Republicans will get a lot of credit for lowering the corporate tax rate and setting up a corporate environment that's friendly to corporations, keeping their businesses in the United States and not relocating overseas. There are clearly some problems with this plan. One big problem is the fact that not everybody in the middle class will get a tax cut. And I do think the Obamacare is kind of a curveball. But the reason why they put the Obamacare repealing the mandate in there is because it pays for other tax cuts. So, yes, it complicates it a little bit, but ultimately it might help get it passed.
I'm going to stay on the storyline that it may not help. Jim Newell over at Slate. Everybody has to file a tax return. Not everybody is necessarily debating the issue about health care as prominently as they are with taxes. You change taxes, everybody's going to start talking about that. And because of that, the risk of not making everybody happy, Jim, is much higher. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think everyone has a stake in taxes, that maybe wasn't true of health care. And one thing I noticed this week was Democrats have been having some trouble getting the base motivated as they were in the health care fight. But they all said to me, well, that's all going to change if they throw in the mandate repeal into this bill. And sure enough, that happened. And you saw this big awakening among Democrats trying to fight this bill. You had the ranking member on the Senate Finance Committee, Ron Wyden, was all of a sudden saying this is a health care bill now. So Democrats think that this gives them an opportunity to really mobilize people and also to draw attention to more problematic areas they see in the bill.
I want to shift to the other big topic, and that's related to sexual harassment coming out of the election in Alabama. And our expert from Alabama, Joyce Vance, being a former U.S. attorney from Alabama, what are you watching on the ground? We were getting a report from our Maya Rodriguez, who was saying, just look at the fundraising. Right now, it really looks like Doug Jones could potentially and is very probable that he will outspend again Roy Moore. Is that going to be the key issue in Alabama to winning here?
So it seems from the numbers we're seeing this morning that Jones, the Democrat, is in fact outspending Moore, the Republican, which would be unusual in any other race in Alabama. But typically, Roy Moore, when he runs, does not seem to attract the high fundraising numbers and engage in the big spending that many Alabama Republicans use. The real issue in this race will be whether Alabama Republicans, whether Moore's diehard supporters decide to support him down to the last, or whether Alabama has a moment where people begin to replace their concerns about party with their concerns about country. This morning, we heard Governor Kay Ivey reiterate the fact that although she believes Moore's accusers, she intends to vote for him nonetheless because she wants to see the Republicans hold the majority in the Senate.
Do you think most women? Do you think most women there? And I'm sorry to interrupt, Joyce. Do believe that? Do you believe that that's going to be the mentality of many women there in Alabama?
There are a couple of issues that are in play here. I think that that's one of them, this desire to see the Republican Party, because of its policies, because of judges remain in power. The abortion issue is also an undercurrent here. Moore is anti-abortion. Doug Jones has indicated that he supports women's freedom of choice in this area, and for many voters, that will become the single issue that matters.
Okay, appreciate that. David, quickly on this one, we've also now brought in Al Franken into the topic of sexual harassment. Will that resonate in Alabama, and has the senator handled the issue well?
Well, I think Al Franken's second apology that he issued, where he said he was disgusted and ashamed by his own behavior, I think that was the right thing to do. I think it was disgusting and shameful behavior in that picture. I will say, though, that I don't think that it makes sense that we're having this discussion of Roy Moore, who is a serial sexual predator at best, very likely a pedophile, in the same conversation as Al Franken. And I think this is an important moment in our culture, in our politics, certainly in comedy. And we should be thinking about doing this in a responsible way. And so to me, what Roy Moore stands accused of doing and what Al Franken did, while totally unacceptable, those are two different things. And we should keep that in mind, and we shouldn't let people conflate those just because it makes the politics of the situation a little easier.
David Litt, Brian Darling, Joyce Vance, and Jim Newell, I owe you all another one next time around. It's been a tight show today, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.